Hey, it's Kalani with another episode of The Way of Music, a guide to the way of music, creating sound connections in music therapy. And in this video, I'm going to talk about what's on page 29, which is developing a musical vocabulary. And this is really one of the first steps you want to take as an improviser, of course, a musician in general, but with regard to improvisation, it's important to be able to describe and perceive of what you're hearing and what you're playing. I find it useful to begin with receptive experiences and then as a musician turn those receptive experiences around and let them become fodder for expressive experiences. So before we can play something, we need to be aware of it, right? It's kind of like before you can start to talk, you need to listen a lot to language. You need to develop your vocabulary. So on page 29 of The Way of Music, I start by giving you, the reader, a list of musical vocabulary of terms, and they're broken up into five columns, five categories, and those are timbral or sound quality, rhythmic, relating to time and how we divide up time, how we mark time, melodic, dynamic, things that are changing, and changes and differences in presence or pressure, sound pressure or amplitude, and then an other category. So if you believe that it could help you to develop an awareness of the musicality of sound before you start to play and express yourself as a musician, this would help you. And that's my belief, that's my premise for putting forth this information. So I want to just briefly talk about it and describe it. Of course, if you get the book, which I recommend, then you'll get the full list. But in short, those categories, again, are timbral. And some of the words I'm giving you here are starting off with, again, sound quality. And the way we actually describe sound quality is to borrow words from other disciplines like visual, kinesthetic, and other categories. So a few of those timbral words would be heavy, light, dark, bright, blunt. So those are a lot of those are actually physical terms, right? But we can use those to start to describe musical terms. So as you listen to a sound, decide if you think that sound has those qualities. Is it airy, for example? You can come up with your own terms. Hard, soft, prickly, mushy, smooth, anything like that. And those would relate to timbre. And then, of course, as you build up this bank or vocabulary of musical terminology that you could apply to a sound you're hearing, then you can turn around as an expressor of music, as a player of music, and as a creator of music, and try to emulate that quality. And so this is the usefulness of developing a vocabulary, first as a receptive method and then as an expressive method. In the rhythmic category, of course, we can have things like fast or slow, steady or unsteady, random, that kind of thing. So pay attention to that. And as I'm talking to you, as I'm speaking, as I'm recording this video, I'm listening, and you've already heard some of the sounds that are around me. So you can start in nature, and that's also one of our first experientials in the book, is just to go outside and listen. Right now I'm hearing an airplane, I'm hearing some mechanical sounds, I'm hearing some animal sounds, I'm hearing some people sounds. All around you there's sounds, and you can start with those sounds to develop your vocabulary. All right, melodic is the next category. And you can start very general. It's not about music theory. This is about tuning in to whether something is, for example, a low pitch or a high pitch or medium pitch. What does it sound like to you? Is there a melody at all, or is it a static tone? Is it a drone, or is it something that's changing, and how is it changing? Is it falling or is it rising, for example? Another category is dynamics. And of course, Dynamic means changing over time. Is it fading away? Is the sound growing louder? Is it a dominant sound? Is it a background sound? Where is it in the spectrum? Is it foreground or background? And then another category that you could start to explore, and these are just a few words that I'm using, and you can add your own. Is the sound focused, or is it dispersed? Does it have a center? Is it clear, or is it nebulous? Can you recognize it? Is it recognizable? Is it, and I put the word tight or loose. This could also belong in the timbre category. But I'm throwing these words out there for your consideration, something that you can play with. So what I recommend you do, and this would relate to the experientials on page 30, and these start with, I'll give you the first one. These start with language music, and I actually categorize these in language music, animal music, mechanical music, and nature music. You can start to listen. We've already heard some animal music, and you could just go out and listen for the sounds of any, insects, animals, anything in nature that is that you would categorize in the animal kingdom, and listen to that. You could listen for language, people talking, and you can do that with a recording or people live, and listen to the musicality of people talking. And you might want to even try to emulate that on your instrument. Same with the animals. Listen to, as I mentioned earlier, mechanical sounds. There's plenty of mechanical sounds in most of our environment. And then just nature music in general. Anything else that comes up from the sound of, one of my favorite sounds, the sound of leaves rustling, either on the ground or in the trees. The wind blowing through the leaves of a tree. And every type of tree has different leaves, and they make different sounds. So if you're out walking or sitting somewhere, tune into that and start to listen to it, and use some of these labels. And this is the whole point of this experience, is to use some of these words to start to describe these sounds. And by doing that, you start to develop your musical vocabulary. Like I said at the beginning of this talk, you start to do it in a receptive mode. So all you have to do is listen and start to describe it. But then you can attach that word, that label. Let's say it's dark, for example. You can start to attach that label to some of the sounds you hear. And then later, when you start to play music, or you want to create music of a certain quality that has certain characteristics, you go back into your memory bank and you use your musical vocabulary to start to speak through your instrument. Okay, does that make sense? If you have any questions about this, you can leave them in the comment section of this video, and I'll do my best to get back to you. The best way to connect with me is through social media or email. You can email me directly at kalanidas@gmail.com. Okay, I hope that helps you. If you don't have a copy of The Way of Music, you can get that on Amazon and through some resellers, some sellers of music therapy books and music education books as well. All right, thanks for watching. I'll see you in another video about The Way of Music.